This is Leila Wilson, and you're listening to XVGM Radio.
Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Mike.
And I'm Justin.
And this is episode 25, Freedom Planet with Leila Wilson. We are very excited today to have the composer, or one of the composers, the main composer, I would say, of Freedom Planet, Leila Wilson, also known as Woofle. So, is it Woofle or Woofle?
It's Woofle.
It is Woofle,
like,
okay.
Yeah, like a dog says woof.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're super excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We wanted to kind of dive into this game because it's got a fantastic soundtrack and really stellar songs, and it's a lot of fun to play, too. We'll kind of pick your brain as far as your composition style, particularly for Freedom Planet, and maybe a little bit beyond as well, just to learn a little bit about what you're going to be doing in the future and whatnot.
Right on.
Cool.
This should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Justin, his hair is spiked, like you stuck a fork in an electric socket. He's really getting into it.
It's always like that, don't lie.
The track that we came in on was the Freedom Planet theme, and this whole soundtrack was composed by Leila Wilson, our guest of honor today, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis. Did I get all that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I believe Stephen is the creator of Freedom Planet. Like, if I recall, like he...
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's the creator and also a co-composer, which is pretty cool. With this theme, in particular, I love those synth hits that you kind of, incorporate.
Yes.
It definitely gives it like a 90s vibe.
Yes.
And that's clearly what you guys were going for with this soundtrack. This game sounds like something that came out of like the Sega Saturn.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The Saturn specifically?
That's the stuff.
Yeah. So
yeah, the funny part with that was that it was a Sonic fan game that he was sharing around the Sonic fan community, and that this when I first met him, because I met him through there, and it was the Sonic fans actually who said, hey, this could kind of be its own thing. You've got a really good game here, why don't you do something original with it? And that was actually what spurred that. I thought that was pretty neat that they were like, if you love something, set it
Yeah.
No, that's really cool.
That's a good point. A lot of those harmonies and melodies are very like uplifting, very fun, and very like you did it kind of like it's almost like it's almost like not a credit song, but it kind of has that motif throughout the game. If I recall, like there's a motif for this track that kind of comes back throughout the game. Is that right?
Yeah, and so the theme itself, the main melody of this one, was one of the first songs that Strife sent me, and he had done the melody and a little bit of arrangement on this project. He would send me a MIDI, and it would be mostly complete. It might be pretty short, and then I'd extend it. In this case, he had a really good grasp on the melody, so I kind of built everything around that, and I knew that sound-wise, since it was a MIDI, it already had a bit of that 90s feel to it, but it really needed to punch it up a little bit, with the beat and the hits and all that. So I took inspiration from a lot of N64 and Sega Saturn and early PS1 games for that.
That's cool.
Wow.
Now, Strife is Shane Ellis?
Strife is Stephen Diduro.
Stephen Diduro, okay. And then Shane Ellis also has a tag name or a...
yes, and he helped us out early in the game. He was around for a little while right when we were first starting, and he did most of the arrangement for the second stage of Dragon Valley.
Okay.
And it was really good, and we're like, oh, this is really cool. I was working pretty fast at that point because Freedom Planet was the only project I had. I didn't really get much work before that. And so I'm going through, I'm up to Relic Maze 2, and by the time I'm up to Relic Maze 2, Shane came back and he's like, hey, I'm ready to work again, and it kind of fell apart because I was going too fast at the time. So fortunately, we were able to keep that. One of his other arrangements is on the OST, I believe. He had done a different arrangement of Relic Maze, and it was really good. He's a good musician, so that was kind of a shame that he wasn't able to work with us beyond those first two, but no, he's very good. Unfortunately, that was it.
Right. How did you get into composing just in general, not just for video games, but including video games as well? Like, what led you to where you are today, being an accomplished composer with Freedom Planet, and then you've got Freedom Planet 2 coming up, and I know I'm somewhat familiar with some of your earlier work as well. You've done a couple other games. I know you did like a shooter, like a vertical shooter, I think, as well.
Wow, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So what kind of got you into composing for games, and what brought you to where we are in 2019?
Lots and lots of serendipity, honestly. I'm self-taught, so when I was really little, one of the kindergartens I went to had a piano that it was a stand-up piano. It had the front off it so you could see the strings and the hammers, and I thought this was the coolest thing ever. I'm like, wow, look at this machine. So I'd press the keys and watch the hammers go, and that kind of just turned into a thing. I guess I got older, we got a little reed organ. My parents got it from my neighbors, and I'd kind of squish around on that a little bit, roll my face on the keyboard. And my mom always told me, she's like, it started sounding like music around the time I was like 10 or 11, and I kind of just went from there. I only had about like 7 or 8 songs that I would always go back to playing on our piano that we eventually got. What I ended up doing was probably around like 2007 or so, I decided I was going to make a mock video game soundtrack. I was just going to make up a video game and make all the music for it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, it was my dream to make video game music ever since I played Chrono Trigger. I was like, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on it 12 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it turned into a book series. Point being, when I did that, I started writing new songs. And then through the Sonic fan community, because I was really big into Sonic ROM hacking, I wasn't good at it, but I liked playing the hacks. I made a few friends and they're like, hey, can you make some music for this? And so I did some music. There's a really big project called Sonic Mega Mix, and that was where Strife first heard my work. And he also played the shooter you mentioned, which I'm not sure I could pronounce properly. I believe it's pronounced Hitogata Hapa, but I don't know. I probably completely butchered that. But he played that. And there was another import by that same company, Chelsea and the Seven Devils, Bunny Must Die.
Yeah.
I love that title. And he was speedrunning that.
Oh,
and
wow.
he's like, okay, I played all these games you scored, and I loved the work you did on Sonic Mega Mix, which was kind of a precursor to Sonic Mania in some ways. So it kind of all came together. He's like, hey, can you do some music for me? And I took a look at the thing and went, oh, great, Sonic fan game, yeah. I'm going to pass on that one. And he's like, please? He's like, please? I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, he's a nice guy. Like, we compose really similarly. Like, we use a lot of the same ideas. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more wrinkles to that story, but that's like, Freedom Planet was the one that really got me into the industry, even though I'd done a couple before that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, we are definitely really intrigued by your story and learning more about how you got on board with Freedom Planet. We'll be talking about that throughout the episode, but let's kick it into our next track. So this is my first pick from Freedom Planet, which was released in 2014 on the PC, the Mac OS X, Linux, Wii U, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. Again, the soundtrack's by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis, and this song is Major Boss Battle. You're back, and that was Major Boss Battle from the Freedom Planet soundtrack, composed by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis. And that was released on multiple systems. Came out on PC, Mac OS X, Linux, Wii U, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. And that is hopefully everything that it came out with. No Xbox, I guess.
This didn't come out on a cartridge on the Genesis, or
no? I know,
they
right?
didn't print it for the Sega Saturn.
Yeah, they didn't print this as a Sega Saturn game, like a lost Saturn title.
Damn.
Yeah.
Somebody should do that.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Right?
I wonder if it would have been playable on the Saturn, because I'm not sure if it would fit like on a Saturn disc. I don't know how any of that stuff works. I just make tunes. So.
I'm not sure. I don't know, but
I'm sure somebody could figure it out.
I mean, like, so before Sonic Mania came out, this was like the game that a lot of Sonic fans. I don't want to speak for every Sonic fan because the Sonic fan base is.
I mean, a lot of Sonic fans that we knew.
Yeah, we have a couple of really close friends of ours that are super huge Sonic fans, and they played Freedom Planet, and they were like, "This is an awesome game. This is like if Sonic came out on the Saturn, it would be like very similar to this."
Yeah.
But this track in particular, Major Boss Battle, this is an amazing track. I love this song. It's very uplifting, but at the same time, it's dangerous. It's got a real slick style to it.
Yeah, I really love the energy of this track.
Absolutely.
It's really powerful. I've been very quiet because I've been in my head trying to figure out that there's a couple of like licks or whatever you want to call them in this song that remind me of something else, and I can't remember what the
Is it Mega Man?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. There's that part that's like It's
as soon as you said Mega Man, I was like, it's Mega Man 3, I think.
It's got those weird like rev moments.
Yeah.
Where it's
either
like
Mega Man 3 or Mega Man X3, one of those two really inspired this.
Yeah.
As well as Gunstar Heroes was another one that definitely factored in there.
Yeah, definitely. I hear like those like almost like motorcycle revs where it's like that like
I actually glissandoed that. I had one finger on the piano or the keyboard rather, like way up at the top, and I just slid my other hand until I hit that finger, and that's how it went. That
that's really cool.
As you can see, I'm very professional.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do to get the tunes.
Yeah,
I mean,
if it sounds good.
Yeah,
that's really funny.
Yeah, that's really cool. So regarding the melody on this one, it's very very uplifting, very harmonious, very adventurous, and you've got that Mega Man kind of meets Sonic, kind of meets Japanese action style song for the melody and the harmony of that, and then that. It's one of those earworms where it gets in your head and it just doesn't leave, and it's that's what you want to achieve with video game music. How did you, when you were writing this, how did you prevent yourself from going insane from just doing that over and over in your head? Because like if I was a composer for video games, that's all I would do is I would just come up with these awesome melodies and then just sing them to myself, and I never get any work done.
I actually do that while I'm driving sometimes. So,
do you like compose stuff like in your head where you'll come up with a melody and then you'll be like, oh, that'd be awesome, I'm going to use that for a game?
Yeah, occasionally. A lot of times, melodies are really difficult for me, which is one of the reasons it was really cool to work with Strife here, because half of the melody is his, the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, that part's his, and so I kind of built the rest off that. This was built off of, on the album, you can find this track 66, it was one of the beta tracks that was for the minor boss battle. It was supposed to be Stage 1 would have the minor boss battle, and Stage 2 would have the major one, which you heard there.
Right.
And the minor boss battle had his melody all the way through, but the major one I kind of did more things to it, and I wrote my own melody, and I kind of extended the song a lot and punched up the way it was arranged. Since he already had such a catchy melody, I knew I had a really high bar to meet as far as that went. So I think I took about 50 swings at that melody where I would just hit record, try something, delete it, hit record, try something. And that's how most of my melodies are written, because I am not good at melodies.
So would you say that that's your biggest weakness as far as when it comes to composing?
100%.
Okay. So what would you feel would be your strengths when it comes to composing video game music?
Bass lines.
Bass lines? Ooh.
Yeah.
That's Justin's forte right there.
I got lost in a bass groove here and there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love bass lines and stuff. I think it comes from playing a lot of Sonic games when I was little, especially the Genesis games. They were all about that because they had that kind of that R&B New Jack Swing feel.
Absolutely.
And so you had a lot of bass and a lot of rhythm. especially through high school, I was listening to a lot of hip hop and R&B and stuff, and that's always kind of stuck with me.
Especially when it comes to Sonic, like that was the majority of the music early on. It was that New Jack Swing meets that 80s to 90s dance groove. It wasn't quite like freestyle type stuff. It wasn't like Latin salsa kind of vibe to it or freestyle. It was more like just straight up like 80s 90s dance. So, but definitely took a lot of inspiration from like Motown, R&B, and New Jack Swing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you really like writing bass lines. Do you play bass?
I wish. My fingers are very dumb, and it's not strange coming from a piano player, but they want to play piano, and I have a guitar, just a regular guitar, not even a bass, because I wanted a bass, but there was a guitar that was available, and I got it. And I am just not very good at it. I'd like to learn, so occasionally I'll pick it up and I'll mess around with it a little bit. Bass is one thing I really would like to learn, just because it looks fun. It looks fun.
Yeah, rhythm section always has the most fun when it comes to...
And there's so many different ways to play it. Like that. You can play it like a regular guitar. You can play it like slap bass. I mean, if you try to play guitar like a slap bass, it'll sound terrible. But you play bass like that, and it's just like, wow, this is so sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could play any instrument, it'd be violin, actually.
There
But
you go.
bass is one that I could realistically maybe learn. Violin, I'm very, very bad at, but I love the sound of it. That and acoustic guitar are like 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But that comes from hours and hours of looping Chrono Cross's soundtrack.
Nice. I heard you mention piano. Are there any other instruments that you do play, or do you mostly focus on piano?
I can play the harp.
Wow.
Because it's just a sideways piano.
That's fair.
It's a little harder to find where you are on it, but it's the same sort of concept. I've only gotten to play one a couple times, but that's the other one I can play.
Was it easy to transition into playing harp? Like, did you just like find a harp and you were like, oh, I'm just gonna play this randomly, and you just like knew how to play it?
Yeah, I just sat down. I'm like, oh, okay, this string corresponds to that key, because I play by ear. I can't read music or anything, so I knew how far apart the keys on the keyboard were, and the strings were the same. It was one of those huge harps.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you learned to ride a bike and then you got on someone else's bike. It's just that.
Right.
Like, oh, I can ride this,
Yeah. So why don't we jump into Justin's first pick, and then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Freedom Planet, its story, and some of the characters.
Yeah.
All right.
So, the first track that I'm going to throw at you today is Target World, also known as Shangmu Academy. And as we said earlier, this is off of Freedom Planet, which came out in 2014 and composed by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis. Welcome back. That was Target World, also known as Shangmu Academy, off the 2014 game called Freedom Planet.
What'd you think of this one?
I really like this one. That's why I picked it.
Yeah.
So
really?
Yeah. Weird how that works.
Yeah.
One of the things that really kind of made me chuckle is when it first comes in, There's an instrument that at first to me sounded like steel drums.
Okay.
And then, of course, as you listen to it, you notice that it's not a Jamaican type of a thing. It's more of an Asian type of a thing. And so in my head, like, not like visually, but in my head, like, I heard it change from steel drums to that instrument that we love to talk about, the shamisen.
The shamisen.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. This is a very, I want to call this Asian 90s dance music.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I got from this one. I love the little Asian flourishes that kind of present throughout the track, and I'm also a big fan of the backbeat.
Yes.
You know, it's got that totally like 90s dance backbeat that you'd hear in like stuff like La Boucher, or, you know, any of the, you know, 90s groove stuff like Rhythm is a Dancer, you know, all that type of good stuff. So.
Yeah.
This soundtrack kind of has a lot of variety to it because you're bouncing all over the place when it comes to the game. It is a 2D platform game, very similar to Sonic the Hedgehog in the sense that the characters are all like anthropomorphic animals. You've got a dragon who is, her name is Lilac, Sash Lilac actually specifically, and then there's a wildcat, she's like a green wildcat, and her name is Carol T. And the thing I really like about these two is they do have a kind of Sonic and Tails vibe, but Carol is very much the, how do I put this? She's like the bad girl, you know what I mean? She's got a motorcycle, like.
Oh yeah.
And Lilac is more of the you know, we have to do something to stop them, you know, like the kind of like the Leonardo of the group.
She's the heroic type, right? Exactly.
Yeah. But all of the characters are voice acted wonderfully. The game has a lot of story, like a surprising amount for an indie game, like a 2D indie game. I mean, this has even more voice acting, I would say, than like any of the Shantae games, which is incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like when you listen to, like, if you play any of the Shantae series, which is, you know, pretty much one of the biggest indie platform games that you could go off of in today's world. There's, you know, they'll have sentences here and there, but not the whole thing.
Yeah, no, like the whole script is voice acted.
Is voice acted, yeah, by, you know, all different characters and everything. So Lilac and Carol are just kind of hanging out, and they end up rescuing this other character named Torque, who is, spoiler alert, actually an alien. He looks like a duck, but then his duck bill, like, I can't remember, I think it falls off. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, whoops, turns out I'm an alien.
Are we missing a character here? I feel like there were three
there's
characters.
One more character.
A Basset Hound?
From
named Milla.
Milla Bassett, So when it comes to the development of this game, because you were working on the music and everything, did you have any kind of knowledge as to how this game was going to be created as far as the plot and the story and the characters go? Like, were you kind of in on that as well?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Until it happened. Yeah. Okay. When I came on, it was still a Sonic fan game. We were right at the point where he was considering transitioning into a game, and I knew there would be a story, but it wasn't until he sent me the script that I went, oh, it's a big story. You know, this is more akin to you know, like a late 80s, early 90s RPG than a mid 90s side scroller. So the script went through a lot of changes, and a lot of things were added and changed, and a lot of stuff had to be cut. But I learned about it as it went on. But when I signed on, I had no idea. I just thought I was making music for a couple levels in a game that I didn't know if it was going to be finished. Like, I didn't know how dedicated Strife was back then. I mean, he practically worked himself to death.
Wow.
On the first game. Like, it was really tough on him. So
I can imagine. Wow. And it shows, too, the level of detail that he goes into as far as the creation of the game. I mean, when that opening cutscene kind of showcases where you've got...
Oh, Brevin and all that?
Yeah, and you've got the spaceships, and you got the reflection on the water and everything, and it's a gorgeous 2D game. So it's really impressive even now to watch and to look. All the sprites are nice and big, very well animated, and very colorful. It's a really gorgeous, like colorful, beautiful game.
Yeah, lots of bright pops of color, which is Sonic games had a lot of color too. But I feel like that was one of the things that made it stand out from the fact that it was an homage to Sonic originally. It's a step above because I feel like they wielded color or more effectively than some of the Sonic games did.
Yeah, I would say it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, with Sonic, you get a lot of really bright blues, a lot of like crystal clear colors, and in this game, like everything has like a purple tint to it.
You know what? That is true. I never noticed that, but you're right.
Yeah, a lot of the characters had purple. They wore purple. Lilac herself is purple as far as like the color of her dragon skin.
I think it's actually Lilac.
Oh, okay. I see that.
I get it.
I see what you did there. Okay.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I'm just pedantic.
Yeah. This guy, the playable characters, end up in kind of like a battle between like the military and aliens, like an alien force that kind of shows up, and then you've got like a mayor of the city. Like it's a very complicated plot between these characters, and it's really you can get kind of lost in it, but at the same time it feels like a cartoon. It feels like a 90s cartoon, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and I think the voice acting kind of,
helps that along.
Definitely helps that along. Yeah.
This song actually has kind of a funny journey, but it came out really well in the end. We definitely wanted to show a lot more of the Southeast Asian influence that their whole world has as we were getting to this point in the soundtrack, because the first couple levels kind of didn't really have that, and we worked on this between Relic Maze and Fortune Knight, I want to say, is around the time that we worked on this. And he had a little bit of song, but he's like, hey, I don't know what to do with this. And I sent him one of the songs from my mock video game soundtrack that I wasn't using anymore. And he was like, oh, I really like this. So he combined that intro he had with the tune from my mock video game soundtrack, and that kind of created Target World. And he kind of had this kind of pulsing fast bass for it in the MIDI. So I just turned that into a full-on 90s dance beat. I wanted it to feel kind of like, I was going to say kind of like the Break the Targets game in the first Smash Brothers, but it's more like the second Smash Brothers Break the Target
totally
game.
Get that. Yeah. Now I'm going to be thinking of every time I hear the song is Break the Targets.
Break my heart.
Yeah. And it is called Target World, so that's actually very applicable.
Yeah.
That's funny. Was that intentional?
I love that song. Yes.
That's
There's a lot of references in my song names, usually to RPGs, but sometimes not. Yeah. Was
there any specific direction that you were given when composing these tracks? To kind of further clarify this question, the Sonic games have a broad range of styles. You know, for the Adventure series, you've got like the more hard rockin' punk style with soaring vocals and everything. And then the New Jack Swing kind of style of the 80s and 90s, kind of like funky dance type stuff with like Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and I guess you could say Sonic CD as well as the Knuckles Chaotix.
Knuckles Chaotix, yes.
Yeah. So was that, did they specifically, like when you were talking to Stephen and Strife and Shane, were you kind of given that as like, oh, I'm going to pick this, or did they tell you that they wanted you to do one style over the other, or were they just like, here's the specific style that you need to write in?
It was more the latter. When Strife sent the MIDIs, he had a general idea of how he wanted it to sound, and I had a general idea of how I wanted it to sound, and most of the songs came out somewhere in the middle, at least early in development. Late in development, he was working so hard that he just kind of turned it over to me.
Yeah.
And that's why some of the later stages have a bit more of almost an RPG sound to them, which a bit of that did sneak into Target World. You can kind of hear with the oboes and the strings. Because it was originally from my mock video game soundtrack, which was an RPG. So his style, what he wanted out of the sound of the game was much, much more Gunstar Heroes, Mega Man, a lot more of the harder sounding games of the 90s, a lot of those adventure games. So he wanted me to kind of get more of a hard-hitting, angry sound. I definitely describe a lot of the music he said as angry. And for me, I wanted more of the New Jack Swing, the funk, and I also wanted to make RPG music because of the storyline and because that's actually what I do.
Sure.
I've never been hired to work on an RPG, but that's what I do.
Yeah.
And
those are two very different styles too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when you've got New Jack Swing,
they're very fun to melt though.
Yeah, no, it's really cool that you attempted to bring the two genres together. I mean, New Jack Swing and RPG. I mean, the only other game that I could think of that maybe has that is like the Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, the fan game.
I guess that's part of the reason that there's such a mishmash in styles, because we had such differing ideas, and I love working with them. It's just we came in from completely different angles, because I looked at the bright colors, and especially in the early levels, I went, oh, the music should be happy and funky and then get angrier as the game goes on. He's like, no, we start hard, we stay hard. And I was like, wow. So that's why Dragon Valley is like this minor key kind of like, pretty quick, like wow, this song it hits you right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to make any of the happier, funkier music up until Fortune Night. Okay. So it was definitely interesting melding the styles. I think we've gotten better at it as time went on. But I don't mind the first game soundtrack being all over the place, just because it makes it a little more dynamic, and people playing it won't get bored of hearing the same thing over and over again.
And we'll definitely be touching on the second game soundtrack and the second game in general as far as release date and a little bit more info about that. But why don't we jump into my next track? So we're going to be listening to a song called To the Rescue!
Exclamation point.
Exclamation point. And again, Freedom Planet, released in 2014 on various systems by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis. Welcome back to XVGM Radio. That was To the Rescue! And that was from Freedom Planet, our game of the day. 2014 was the year of release. And again, the soundtrack by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis, also known as Woofle, Strife, and Blue Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mega Man?
I mean...
Yes. If that's the entire question, yes.
Yes. This reeked of Mega Man in the absolute best possible way.
Yeah. The melody that I was hearing in the other track was also in this one, but it was a little bit more Mega Man-ish. And, I'm sure after we're done recording, I will go look at I'll go listen to my collection and realize that this was Snake Man all along. But I can't remember the actual... That might actually be it then. That might be the influence.
Was one of my favorites, yeah. Yeah, I get a Mega Man vibe.
That's the one.
Yeah. Love that song.
But I also get more towards the end. I kind of hear those RPG elements that you're talking about, that you're introducing.
Yeah,
too.
They sneak in there.
Yeah,
they definitely do. And in all my work, I could be scoring a fighting game and I'd still be making RPG.
You should.
I want to hear that.
Yeah, you should really put that to the test. You get a fighting game Mortal Kombat style. It's dun 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 dun, and then the town theme comes out of nowhere. And it's da 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 da.
Actually, I am working on a fighting game right now.
Oh, nice. Really? You need to sneak that in. You need to sneak in a town theme from Final Fantasy.
There's a lot of RPG elements in that game.
Oh wow!
It's kind of got a Soul Calibur thing going on where it's really story focused. So
okay, very cool.
This is as close as I've gotten to scoring an RPG yet.
That's really cool, though.
Yeah.
The story with this one was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because originally there was a track called Disaster Strikes, which is also on the OST, but I don't think is in the game, which is supposed to be like when stuff goes really bad, things are exploding. It was, kind of like a, oh, we got to get out of here type of theme.
Yeah.
And then this was the counterpart to that, and I composed both of them back to back. This one was done just by me, by myself. And To the Rescue was me trying to sound like Strife.
Okay.
Because since we came at it from such different angles, I'm like, okay, so what if I try to sound like him? So that's where we came out with that kind of that angry but heroic, Freedom Planet Strife sound from that song, even though that one was composed by me.
Do you find that there's a lot of tracks that you write for soundtracks now that you've got, a bunch of soundtracks under your belt? Do you kind of feel like you'll write a bunch of tunes for a soundtrack and then you end up with a lot that gets left out of the game? Yeah,
on some projects, it really depends on the employer. Okay. In some cases, with Freedom Planet, since Strife is a musician, we tend to work together a lot. And there's some songs, for instance, on the second Freedom Planet, there's probably twice as many songs as there are for the first game.
Oh, wow.
That will probably never be heard by anybody because we would start it and go, nah. And that one would go in the bin. Yeah. And so in the case of Freedom Planet, yes. In the case of other projects, especially if they're on a tight budget, it's usually, very set, a few amount of songs. There's some projects I've only contributed 1 or 2 songs to, and those ones all end up making it in. So I guess it also depends on the scope of the project as well as the budget and who's doing it.
Right. Now, regarding the other composers, how closely did you work with them, and in what capacity? Were you creating, harmonies or bass lines or whatever, and then kind of passing stuff back and forth online, or how does that work?
Well, I only ever directly spoke with Strife. I never actually got to meet Blue Warrior, which kind of makes me sad, 'cause like I said, he's very talented, but so much of it ended up being me and Strife. And we started out via email, and he'd send me a MIDI, and I'd send back OGG files of what I'd done. I don't know why I started using OGG, but I've always used it, so...
What is OGG?
It's kind of what PNG is to bitmap.
Okay.
If that makes sense. It's higher quality than, say, a JPEG, which would be like an MP3.
Okay.
But it's also smaller than a WAV file, which would be a bitmap. It's not quite as high quality as a WAV file, but it's higher quality than an MP3. And a lot of games use them. Like the entire OST, if you check the files for the game, they're all OGG files. They have like built-in looping capabilities too, which is really, really cool to have. But
so
anyway,
that's the name of the program, or that's the name of the files?
It's a file type.
Oh,
that's the name of the file.
Oh,
I use Acoustica Mixcraft for.
Oh, Mixcraft.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I use
good
that
stuff.
for things.
I really like Mixcraft.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Coming from someone who I used to do everything on a Mac, so I used to do the little bit of music stuff that I did in GarageBand, and when I moved over to Windows, it took me a while to find something that I could work in, and Mixcraft is very. I actually think it's better than GarageBand.
Oh wow!
It's literally PC GarageBand.
yeah.
So with a sequel coming out fairly soon with Freedom Planet 2, are we going to continue seeing the same sort of like musical genre, this kind of melding of musical genres or game genres when it comes to your music with Freedom Planet 2?
Yes, but big asterisk there. There will be even more. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the second game soundtrack, he kind of turned me loose on it. In the first one, he was like, hey, I'd really like to stick to this sound. And the second one, he's like, just go nuts. Because I had a provision, because there were a lot of unused tracks in the first game. I said, look, I will make music, and if you can't use it, just toss it in the bin and I'll make more, and we'll just keep doing it. You put it wherever you want.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fit the level that I thought it did, put it somewhere else or throw it away. I don't care. We're doing it really fast and loose for the second game, and I think that's produced better music because there's less opportunity for us to butt heads on differing ideas. We just throw one in the bin and just move on.
Right.
So
that's really cool. I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of freedom, no pun intended, with the name of the game. But it sounded like you had a lot of freedom with composing these tracks.
Oh yeah, the second game, I think part of the reason that it sounds so different is that I wanted to kind of tell part of the narrative with the music. So I wanted to do the thing I was talking about with the first game, where the early levels have this kind of lighter, more funky sound, and then the later ones are angry.
Right.
And so the second game is like exactly that, although there's some funky stages, some funky music pretty late into it, because he's just like, hey, go nuts.
Right.
So that one will be interesting. I wish there was more I could say about it, but I don't think I'm allowed to say too much more, but
right.
That game is going to make the first game look like it was made for the NES.
Wow.
Ooh.
That is awesome.
Like in terms of everything, graphics, voice acting, it's way up there. It's incredible.
Wow.
That's exciting.
That is very exciting to hear. All right. Well, with that said, why don't we move into Justin's next pick? What do you got for us?
Right. So next up, we're going to hear Trap Hideout 2 from Freedom Planet by Woofle, Strife, and Blue Warrior.
Cool.
Welcome back to XVGM Radio. That was Trap Hideout 2 from our highlighted game of the day, Freedom Planet, composed by our highlighted composer of the day, Leila Wilson. Also, these other guys, Steve Diduro and Shane Ellis.
So,
to be fair, that one actually was all me.
Okay. Now, with this track, that synth string, that
yes,
that's like the most prominent thing that I'm hearing. But then like as the track goes on, it turns into this super funky bass line with that oh man, I love that bass line. And you get these like whimsical kind of like almost pan flute kind of style flute arrangements. Those are really cool too. It's just like a nice like arrangement of instrumentation here. It's so different and yet so fresh at the same time. When you were composing this one, tell us a story about this one. What was involved?
So Trap Hideout was added pretty late into development. I think it was actually completed after a couple of the stages that came after it. I know that Lilac gets her own stage, Pangolukun. I'm probably pronouncing that very wrong. I was talking with Strife, and I'm like, well, the other characters will have less stages, right? And he's like, yeah, maybe I'll figure something out about that. And then he went back to work on other stuff, and then all of a sudden he's like, boom, here's Trap Hideout. And I was like, whoa. And he's like, and here's a song for it. And he sent me that, and it was a good song. I just felt that we should try something different for that stage. So that's why there's the two versions of it, even though only one appears in the game, because there was a lot of back and forth on whether the song worked, if we should try something else, etc. And unfortunately, Trap Hideout 2 didn't make it in, but I definitely preferred that over the first Trap Hideout. But I kind of went for a more, almost like a Streets of Rage sound with it, but I wanted to like speed it, like a faster Streets of Rage. That's, why you got that weird funky bass line and all that, and I wanted to keep the more ethnic types of instruments in it as well.
So this song is not in the final game?
Yeah, only the Stage 1 version is.
Oh, okay.
Which...
But this is on the soundtrack.
I believe it's still in the files. Yeah, it's in the soundtrack, and I believe it's in the files.
Okay, I see.
So you could actually swap it in if you wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
that's kind of neat.
Really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. That'd be kind of interesting.
I also really like the funky bass line you have on this, and the string hits kind of remind me almost of like an RPG battle theme in certain ways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah, definitely.
That's really, really cool. Like, I really enjoyed that one. It may not have been in the actual game, but I think I actually prefer this one over Trap Hideout 1. I mean, I picked this one over Trap Hideout 1, so I guess, Did you get into like composing music first, or did you like start off with like teaching yourself how to play an instrument and then going into like creating music from that?
More the latter, I'd say, because I was learning this while I was, going through grade school, basically. Just I'd come home and just smash on the organ until, it started to sound like something. And then, I composed a couple little songs. And then as I got older, that turned into, about 10 songs. And then it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I decided to do the mock game soundtrack and actually force myself to write new material. So it was kind of a long process, and thankfully I decided to do that project because we probably wouldn't even be on this podcast if I hadn't.
Did you say that you don't read sheet music?
Yeah, I can't read it at all.
Huh. How do you actually do the music composition? Is it all like
all by ear?
Or
it's all by ear. Yeah.
Okay.
So when it comes to recording things like guitar, because you said that you don't play guitar, but when you're listening to this soundtrack, there's a heavy amount of what I would call synth guitar. So
it is.
So is that all done through the keyboard as well?
Yep, that is all MIDI, believe it or not.
Wow.
I use the pitch bend wheel and the modulation wheel to make it sound like I'm playing it on the guitar, but it's all MIDI.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's really impressive.
Thank you.
When this game came out, it garnished quite a bit of positive press. Fans loved the game. After you kind of sat back and kind of heard through the grapevine that this game was doing well, what was your train of thought when it comes to wrapping up on Freedom Planet? And was it like, oh, now I gotta move to the next thing? Or were you just kind of like, yeah, like I did a good thing. Like, let me, kind of sit back and rest on my laurels and, pat myself on the back.
I guess the surprise really happened when the Kickstarter was successful, because Strife only asked for like 2,000 something, and we got 25K.
Wow.
And we were it was insane. So I was one of the songs on the OST to kind of a more RPG-esque take on, oh my gosh, what is it called? Fortune Night, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
That one was written the night that the Kickstarter wrapped, and we were all kind of in shock. By that point, we had just brought the VAs on, and everybody was just like, whoa, like, this happened. And it's continued to be that ever since, because I was nobody when I came onto the project, and I've never really gotten past that. I've never really considered the fact that anybody knows my work or appreciates it. I'm just, I still see myself as some kid on the internet trying to talk to Yasunori Mitsuda and not getting a reply.
We'll have to have all the XVGM radio listeners kind of reach out and be like, yo, talk to Woofle.
He is my hero. Like, oh my god, I would die if he even noticed I existed.
So would you say that he's your biggest inspiration when it comes to video game music composition?
10,000%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I first sat down and played Chrono Trigger, I went, wow, the music kind of touched me in a way that, like, not even Final Fantasy music reached that for me. And I went, oh, this really hits, hits me in the heart, and I want to make music like whoever this person is. And it wasn't until I was older, around the time of Xenogears, that I was starting to read video game magazines and went, oh, this is the same guy who made the music in that game. And then from there, I've kind of just followed all of his work, and that's really cemented kind of my musical identity, because he's done a lot more than just your standard RPG fare. There was a game, oh god, it was called like 1,000 Bullets or something. It was one of the ones that never came over here, and he did like straight up 70s funk for it, and he does a lot of jazz. The dude is like prolific.
Yeah, him.
I didn't mean to get us so far off a track, but yeah.
Yeah, him and like composers like Motoi Sakuraba, Hitoshi Sakamoto. Those are composers that compose to live. Like, they live to compose and they compose to live. So that's why you see so many game soundtracks with their names on them, because these guys just pump this stuff out like it's them drinking water. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sakuraba especially. I don't know how he hasn't just keeled over yet with the music that he makes.
Absolutely.
And it's all good.
Yeah.
I can't figure this out.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does that.
It's all
so
phenomenal.
Crazy.
Yeah. Let's move into my next pick, which is Dragon Valley 1 off of the Freedom Planet soundtrack, again composed by Woofle, Strife, and Blue Warrior.
You're listening to XVGM Radio.
You're back with XVGM Radio, and that was Dragon Valley 1 from the Freedom Planet soundtrack, released in 2014. And this soundtrack was by our guest of honor, Woofle, also known as Leila Wilson. So this song, one of the things I noticed while playing this game, in this track in particular, because I think this is one of the earlier stages, if not the first stage. And
yeah, it's the very first.
Yeah, and you hear...
Depending on who you're playing as, to be fair.
Oh, that's fair, yeah.
I haven't beaten this game yet. I'm on, I think stage 5 or 6, because I'm doing adventure mode. And, it's always been one of those games that I will pick up and play for a little bit, and then I'll enjoy it, but then I'll put it down and jump to something else, and I always come back to it. It's a tough game, when it comes to,
Yeah, it is.
I was just sitting down a little bit, getting back into it before we recorded, and I was stuck on I think it's the stage 5 boss, where you're fighting the panda girls. I can't remember her name.
Oh, Nira.
Nira, yeah. So I was fighting...
She killed me so many times.
Yeah. Oh. She's got, this staff sort of thing, and then she has these ice powers that she uses. And I kept getting hit. She has these boomerangs that she throws out too, these ice boomerangs. Yeah. I kept getting hit by the ice boomerangs.
Well, I do have some good news for you on that front. You get to play as her in the second game, so you can frustrate other people with that.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
I like the design. I like the
really fun to play as.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's cool. She's right up there with Carol. I can't figure out which one I like more. I mean, I like all of them, but yeah, she's so cool.
Carol is the reverse Tails, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Tails always to me felt too much like a nerdy, smart Luigi,
Nerdy, smart Luigi?
Yeah,
okay.
He was always he was always nervous. And all right, well, Sonic, we probably shouldn't do that, but I guess I'll build an invention. That's my impression of Tails. So Dragon Valley 1, those voice samples of the kick sound. You like that, kind of the...
oh, yeah.
The karate kind of
That is actually Dawn, the voice actress for Lilac.
Okay,
oh, wow.
okay.
Yeah. I pitched her up a little bit and layered 4 different layers, but that's her.
Okay.
That's cool.
That makes sense, because especially when you're listening to a track, it does sound like the voice actress who plays her, so
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really stands out to me in this track. I don't know why, but I'll be playing the game and playing this level in particular, and you've got those whoosh drums, because you've got those... It's the drums have an almost whoosh sound to them at points. It's really weird.
If it's the thing I think that it is, what I did was I reversed the bass drum sample every now and then, and I'd have it fade into the kick, and so you get this really weird sound. I really think cool. that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Now that you said that, that's probably exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
You said you reversed the bass drum sample. I'm like, oh, that's what that would sound like.
And then slightly off track of what we were talking about, getting back to the whole Tails thing, Carol feels like reverse Tails to me, because she's very much like a, oh, well, let's just go kick some butt. You know what I mean? She's not afraid to fight, and she's very they're at one point in the game, they get stuck in this prison cell. It's when they're trying to explain to this
to the Magister.
Yeah. And they're trying to explain to him, hey, listen, we got this part here that's not from your world, and we want to do something with this. And he's just like, yeah, well, I talked to my guard here, and she says that you guys are actually, you used to be in some group or whatever that was thieves.
Yeah.
And then at that point they're like, whoa, we used to do that. And they're like, nah, see you later. We're sending you to prison.
They're still criminals, to be fair. Right at the beginning, they're talking about stealing energy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, they're criminals.
Yeah. So they end up in a prison cell, and so you've got the 3 characters: Lilac, Carol, and
Milla.
Yep. And
it's
Carol's
Russian.
Trying to bite her way out of the bars, the steel bars. And then you've got Lilac, doing her Leonardo bit, we've got to do something, Cam Clark style. And then you've got Milla, who's just guys, I just dug a tunnel down. I'm a dog.
Yeah.
So I just dug. I love the individual personalities that they all kind of come together and work together. And it's cool. Like I said, it's just one big, happy family, but also an awesome like Saturday morning cartoon. So yeah, I think the bottom line is we need to get a Freedom Planet cartoon going.
I would happily make the music for that. And
there you go.
That's kind of what I did for the cutscenes. I leaned more into a cartoon type of sound just because I knew that the scenes were going to be very long.
Right. And
I wanted the songs to not jump out and punch the listener in the ear because they needed to hear what was being said and watch the animations. Whereas, during a level, you want to punch them in the ear because that's part of the whole shebang. You have to tell part of the story that way, but cutscenes, it's a whole different dynamic. So
cool.
That's why a lot of the cutscene songs are they're not quiet volumetrically, but quiet just comparatively to the level songs.
Well, that makes sense. All right, Justin, what do you got next?
All right, next up we're gonna go to a type of stage that jives with things that I like. It's called Shmup Stage from Freedom Planet by Woofle, Strife, and Blue Warrior. Let's hear it. Welcome back, listeners. That was Shmup Stage from 2014's awesome game Freedom Planet, composed by Leila Wilson, Steve Diduro, and Shane Ellis. And I really, really enjoyed this one. It reminded me of, I want to say, R-Type.
This has a lot of like really cool like dual harmonies and melodies, which I really like. Anything with a melody and then having like a higher or lower octave melody, that's my bread and butter.
That's fair. That's fair. I really like the beginning part. That to me it sort of sounded almost like a stage select, but it's clearly like when you're doing a shmup stage, you've usually got like the first 2 seconds are the only point in which you'll ever have any calmness before all the enemies come at you. So
Right.
like it really captures that feeling of like calmness, of just like getting ready, and then everything just kicks in. You get those dual harmonies,
right,
and I'm assuming enemies all over the place. I haven't played this stage.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. I don't remember this stage in the.
It's a very late game.
Okay, that makes sense.
The interesting part was there were going to be more shmup stages.
Mm-hmm.
I swear there's 2. I might be wrong. But there were going to be more back when we were trying to get Torque into the game playable. One of his first levels was a shmup.
Oh.
And they're pretty fun. Strife is a big fan of shmups.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he got them to work in that engine and like made them fun and stuff really speaks to his passion for the game in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing about shmups is they can be very difficult, and when you're kind of putting a shmup stage, when you kind of put that into a game where that's not the main concept.
Yeah, like a platformer.
Yeah, like a platformer like this, or, you know, like a action adventure game or an RPG, you know, kind of thing like Undertale, for example. You've got to make it so that it still fits in with the feeling of the game. And I think that here, especially musically speaking, it definitely fits that format.
Yeah.
So what was the story with this one as far as composition wise? Like, what were you trying to accomplish with it?
So this song basically fell down a ravine because when we first started it, it was going to be for Jade Creek, which back then was called Chaos Creek. And it was another case of me composing a song to try and sound like Strife because I was like, okay, I really want to fit the style that he's going for. And I think some of our best music definitely came out of that. So it was for that level, and then somewhere along the way, that song wasn't going to work for it. But he really liked the song, and he said, well, why don't we make it a theme for Torque? And I said, oh, yeah, we can do that. So I changed the instruments around a lot. I still have the older version of it back from when it was Chaos Creek. I'd have to dig that up. But I changed a lot of stuff. There's a lot of arpeggios in there now because when I think shmups, I think 2 things: arpeggios and triplet notes.
Yeah.
And the whole thing wasn't in triplets this time, so I was just like, okay, we'll get the arpeggios in there. And I just kind of went from there, and I listened to a lot of shoot 'em up music. And as I was going through all that, I realized that I had basically written Mega Man music again. So I tend to do that. I tend to fall into the old Mega Man trap, which is not a bad place to be, but that wasn't quite what I was intending. But I think it worked out in the end. At least the arrangement sounds very shoot 'em up.
So speaking of Mega Man, if you could compose for any video game franchise, what game franchise would you pick and why?
Okay, so the first thing I thought of was the Chrono series, which will never have a third game.
Yeah, probably not.
And then I from there, the logical thing to go to is the Xeno series with, you know, Xenogears, and then eventually Xenosaga, and then eventually Xenoblade, because they're still making those.
Yeah.
I would definitely say I would love to be the only American composer on any of these Japanese RPGs. I don't know, if they bring back Breath of Fire for something that isn't a cruddy mobile game, that would be really cool. Same goes for Wild Arms. None of these things will ever happen, but it's it's one of those things, if it could be any series, yeah, definitely any of those JRPG franchises that made me fall in love with video game music in the first place.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, your passion for RPG music definitely comes through here, but despite, you know, kind of sneaking in those things in this soundtrack, you did keep to a specific style, which definitely kind of feels naturally and organically as if it belongs to the Freedom Planet universe. So let's move into my next track, which is Fortune Knight 2. And again, composed by Woofle, Strife, and Blue Warrior, released in 2014 for the Game of the Day, Freedom Planet. right, you are back with XVGM Radio, and that was Fortune Knight 2. That little track was off of the Freedom Planet soundtrack, and it was released in 2014 on various different systems. And that was composed by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis. So this track, I really enjoy the string arrangements that you've got here.
Yeah.
Those really stood out to me. Those very
the violins.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned that you're not as skilled with violin, but it's one of those instruments that you would really like to learn. Was that very easy to do when you were using the keyboard? Like, because it clearly sounded as good as it did here.
Yeah.
So was that a challenge for you when composing this one?
Yeah, the main reason is the particular VST I used, it's a plugin for Contact. And if you're familiar with using Contact as a VST, some of them can be a little finicky. And this one is very, very old. It's not even for sale anymore. It's impossible to find.
Oh, wow.
Okay, not quite impossible, but you can't buy it. So you have to find it. And it was very, very glitchy. A lot of times a note would just hang. The polyphony was 1, sometimes 0. There's just a lot of weird oddities to it, and I think they were in the process of fixing it and then just gave up on it.
Oh, wow.
Because, it's not even on their site available anymore.
Wow.
So it was very easy to play the notes and make them sound good when the VST was cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be times it would just straight up crash, and it would take the entire project file with it. So you're hammering save with one hand and playing with the other. Because it had a legato function where if you hit one note and then hit another, it would, the note would go whoop between them. And sometimes you do that, and you're looking at your desktop a moment later, like, that just happened. And that VST was a pain in the butt. I've since gotten rid of it, not only because it was glitchy, but out of necessity because it was huge. Because most of the Contact things are very large. There's the library, but I miss it sometimes. I've found some other violins that are okay, but none of them have ever quite sounded like that.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to ask if you happen to know. So there's a percussion instrument that you have in there, and I don't know.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of it though.
Darn.
I do know it's Japanese.
Yep.
It's not a shamisen.
And
definitely not a shamisen.
And I first heard it in Mystical Ninja Goemon for the N64. I went, that's a neat sound. What is that? And so I've been chasing that sound. I find it in various drum libraries and stuff. And I still don't know what it's called. So if anyone listening to this knows, tell one of the three of us, please, what is that called?
I'm going to guess. So if you know, tell me if I'm right or wrong. I think I'm going to guess that it's a mokugyo, which is it's like a wooden fish, like a fish carved out of a woodblock.
Fish?
Yeah, you strike it and it makes noise.
How's that spelled?
Mokugyo. Mokugyo.
Because now I'm looking it up.
So it's tough to stand out these days when it comes to independent video games. What about Freedom Planet piqued your interest when it came to composing for it, and what do you feel that you brought to stand out from the crowd when it comes to composing for a game like this?
With Freedom Planet, I guess what kind of piqued my interest and kind of drew me in was honestly Strife's passion for it. Like, he committed so hard to it. Like I said, almost killed him. I'm sure you guys have heard the tales of what Mitsuda went through working on Chrono Trigger, where he got the ulcers.
Yeah, he had like stomach ulcers and he was like bedridden. He ended up hospitalized. Yeah, and then that's when Nobuo Uematsu jumped in.
Yeah, Uematsu came in.
Yeah.
So that's about the level that Strife hit on stress working on this thing, because he cared so much.
And yet he jumped back in to work on the second one.
He jumped right back in.
Wow.
Yeah, and he is working himself to the bone. Like the dude is absolutely committed to the point where, I'll check in on him now and then. I'm like, you doing all right? And he's like, yep, I'm working on this. I'm like, oh my god, this guy is so good at doing what he does. So
yeah, well, it certainly shows. And from what I understand, he is pairing with Christian Whitehead, who was part of Sonic Mania.
Yes.
He's like a huge part of the fan game scene for Sonic fan games.
Yeah.
Sega actually hired him and I guess the development staff to work on Sonic Mania, and so I guess he's being brought on for Freedom Planet 2 to help with like programming and also like porting over the physics.
As far as I know, I'm not too much familiar on the programming side, to be honest. But I had heard that he was coming in, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's really neat.
It's pretty cool.
So, next up, we are going to hear a troublesome tune called Here Comes Trouble.
Sounds good, off of Freedom Planet. Released in 2014 by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, and Shane Ellis.
Alright, we have been listening to Freedom Planet, a game that came out back in 2014 on many systems and PCs and Mac OSs, composed by Leila Wilson, Stephen Diduro, Shane Ellis, and the track was Here Comes Trouble, and now, Mike, let's make it double.
What's that from?
Pokemon.
Oh, so, yeah, I'm not
now
Pokemon
Peter's
guy.
really
No,
mad
I know.
Yeah. So drum-wise, this is a really, top-notch, tight drum sound that you've got here. That snare really hits hard on this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of hits, the orchestral hits.
Yeah, the synth hits, the,
Da, 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 da.
Yeah. I got a real kind of if New Jack Swing was an evil boss. That's the vibe I got.
Oh, man. That's an aesthetic right there, isn't it?
If New Jack Swing was an evil boss.
Yes. So, how did you create that sound, that warbling kind of synth hit?
That background stuff?
Yeah, that wah, 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 you know.
So that's a random comp, and I don't know exactly how it works, but it's within one of the synthesizers I have, and every time you press the key, it's filtered a little bit differently, and also the velocity with which you strike the key kind of influences that to an extent. So if you hit it really quiet, you get more of a soft sound. You get a brighter sound the harder you hit it, but it's also a little bit random as well. And I'm actually just hammering one note the whole thing. I'm just sticking with the tonic, although occasionally I'll jump around when the song does. We don't really have to move around too much with something like that, because it kind of, the frequencies are all over the place, so it sounds like a bazillion different notes. And I heard that and I went, oh man, this really feels like a cutscene from a Saturn game or something, and I'd really like to use this. And it also sounds like a villain from a Saturday morning cartoon. He shows up and he's laughing, and so I kind of just went from there and just sort of built a whole song around just that.
I definitely got a Sonic CD vibe from this. Almost as when Metal Sonic appears, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You get because you've got those industrial kind of vibes there that are kind of buried underneath real deep tones.
Yeah, the sound effect almost kind of sounds like an industrial sound effect, now that you mention it. During the break, you were mentioning that this was one of the tracks that you were saying was sort of like a cutscene track.
Yeah.
I mean, with what you're saying, where comparing it to Metal Sonic, it really kind of comes through, because all the levels in this game, the music is really sort of driving and hard, like some of the levels are. It opens up and it sort of almost sounds to me, it almost feels like a detective feel, you're opening on this front of a police station or just inside the police station or the detective's office.
I did grow up watching Law and Order, so
there you go.
I love the original Law and Order. Yeah.
But yeah, that's just like the image that I get listening to the start of this. I don't know why, and I can't really explain it other than like it really gives me this opening on an office or like a police station type thing. I don't know what's actually going on in this scene.
It's the most evil bake sale you've ever seen.
Yeah. The first time it plays is when Serpentine his robots get blown up, and he jumps out and he's gonna get Lilac, and then like she's convinced that he's going to like eat Torque, and he's like, "What? Eat?" You know, in typical Serpentine fashion, he just shouts everything. He's like a pro wrestler, basically.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all the villains are very like larger than life. So to speak.
Yeah.
So earlier you had mentioned your video game composer inspiration. I'm curious, do you have a non-VGM inspiration?
The fact that I have to think about that is probably very telling.
I mean,
most
that's
of the
totally
musicians, most of the non-video game musicians that I like, they don't sound anything at all like what I produce. Actually, I really like pop punk a lot. One of my favorite bands is the Ataris, for instance, and I sound absolutely nothing like them.
That's fair.
But I also loved Motion City soundtrack, and I'm really sad that they retired. Taking Back Sunday, I think I'm showing my age now. Pretty much everybody else that I really love musically was composing in the 80s. Yeah. One of my other album projects that I've been working on, I started the first one when I was working on Freedom Planet, actually, is all 80s stuff, so there's a lot of like weird side projects I do. I'm one of those.
So with those other interests, if you had to pick your top 5 albums, and I mean, again, no restrictions on where these albums come from, what would your top 5 albums actually be?
Well, each and every one of them would be a JRPG soundtrack. I can do that, right?
Yeah. Your top 5.
So you got your Chrono Cross, your Xenogears, the first Grandia, Wild Arms, Alter Code F, the remake of the first one, Legend of the Heroes, Trails in the Sky. Oh, Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Well, see, now we're over 5. Trails in the Sky is absolutely beautiful. All the Grandias, you know. So it's definitely among those. Suikoden, especially the first 2.
Yes, that's a really good one.
Very JRPG heavy, but of course that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into our next track. So we're moving from Trouble to Aqua. This is Aqua Tunnel 1, again off of Freedom Planet, the 2014 release by Woofle, Strife, and Blue Warrior. You are back from XVGM Radio, and that was Freedom Planet's Aqua Tunnel 1. That was released in 2014 on the PC, Mac OS X, Linux, Wii U, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. And this soundtrack was composed by our guest of honor, Leila Wilson, also known as Woofle. And the other composers were Stephen Diduro, Strife, and Shane Ellis, Blue Warrior. I get a real Capcom vibe from this track. It's those synths. And the way that everything kind of like melds together, it's like if Capcom was a grilled cheese sandwich, that's what this would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many cheeses?
That'd be a very interesting sandwich.
Yeah. That's what it is. It's a grilled cheese sandwich. So I was digging this one. I really like those Capcom-esque like whoosh drums that kind of come in.
The whoosh drums?
Yeah.
Is it possible that those are once again reversed drums?
That's a possibility. That's a very strong.
I did do that at one point. That might have been in the second stage. There was one point where I took the actual wave file of the song and I chopped it into little bits and made it like skip at one point, but I think that was in the second one, and that comes from Strife and I both bonded over this obscure Korean MMO that we played back in the day called Latte.
Okay.
And it had really, really good, funky, neat music. And so this song was actually mostly inspired by Latte.
Oh, wow.
And just Korean, kind of the more cutesy Korean MMOs in general. Your Maple Stories, your Mabinogis, all that. So Korean MMO music was kind of one of the other major thrusts of this. I don't usually get to mention much, but this song in particular definitely had some inspiration from that. When I set out to write it, he's like, okay, it's gonna be water stage, and I'm one of those weirdos who loves water stages.
No, I like them too. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm not the only one. So I'm like, I'm going to give it my all. I'm like, okay, do you want Hydro City? Do you want Bubble Man? And he's like, yes, but I also want Latte. And I'm like, okay, and then this song. This one we did backwards, though, because I composed it and sent him the MIDI. That he added a second part to it, then sent it back, and then I mastered it into an OGG. So that was actually kind of interesting. It was a reverse order one.
That's really cool.
Yeah, wow.
How did Shane Ellis fit into all this, Blue Warrior? Because you've mostly talked about Strife, and of course, he's the main game creator, but how does Shane Ellis fit into these tracks?
He was on early. He did the arrangement for Dragon Valley 2, and he had started to do one for Relic Maze, and the problem was he didn't have enough time to really work on the project, and I was already done with the first Relic Maze and making the second, and he came back with his Relic Maze arrangement around that time, and, I was getting to the point where I was starting to work on Fortune Knight, and it just ended up not working out, unfortunately. So Shane's work, you can hear it in Dragon Valley 2, that arrangement with the triplet notes and that kind of really swinging, almost swashbuckling rhythm to it, that was all him. And one of his other tracks is on the OST. There's an arranged version of Relic Maze that he did, but unfortunately that was all that he was able to do. I think he's a really good musician, so I hope he's still working and stuff, because I would love to hear more of his work.
Right. And he's not on Freedom Planet 2, it's just you're on as the main composer as well as Strife, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's me and Strife, and then the audio is being mastered by Falk. I'm trying to remember his last name. I believe it's Falk Al-Jung, but I'm probably mispronouncing it. But he has done mastering. He did the mastering on Sonic Mania. I believe he did some work on one of the Kingdom Hearts games. He did some mastering on that. Like, the dude's prolific, and the work that he's done with the stems I've sent him, it sounds so much better than when I sent it to him. So
wow.
That is
we
part
have
of the
that to
reason.
look forward to with Freedom Planet 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's definitely on another level thanks to his help.
All right, well, we are rounding the corner on this episode, and we are going to end it with Justin's final pick for Freedom Planet. What do you got for us?
So my last pick of the night is going to be Zhao's Airship on Freedom Planet, which was 2014 on the PC, Mac OS X, Linux, Wii U, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and the kitchen sink. And was, of course, composed by Woofle, Strife, and Blue Warrior. Welcome back to the final track of the night. That was Zhao's Airship from our featured game Freedom Planet with our featured composer Leila Wilson, also known as Woofle.
Yes, and this track definitely gave me like a lot of different vibes. Actually, I got vibes from like Weather Channel, oddly enough.
Okay. I get that a lot.
Get that
a lot.
With those kind of like jazzy with that saxophone, the saxophone synth, and then you've got those kind of pitter patter drums with the very like jazzy melody.
The piano.
Yeah. It's very like smooth kind of jazz.
I can see that. I got a very like JRPG. I don't know if I want to say menu music or like traveling music. I mean, it's called Zhao's Airship, so I might lean a little more to like light travel music.
It was a hub map, if that helps.
Hub map. Okay.
Oh, okay.
It was going to be. Because originally we're going to have hubs where you could speak to NPCs and stuff between levels.
Huh.
We just ran out of time, honestly. So Zhao's Airship was one of those. The other ones ended up being in the backgrounds of cutscenes, like Zhao Majestico was for his palace.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
That's something we're going to do in the second game, but that's why this one, you won't hear it in the game, but it's on the OSG, and I do believe it's still in the files, because it was made for right before Sky Battalion. So you were supposed to go around, you could talk to the other characters, you could talk to NPCs, you'd learn a little bit more about the world and all that, and it's kind of like a calm before the storm, as it were, even though you didn't know the storm was coming.
Right. So I gotta ask, since we've mentioned it several times on this episode, Woofle. We simply must know the reference if possible. Where did that come from?
I don't want to Maroon 5 you, so I'll tell you the secret.
Okay.
Basically, when I was 13 or 14 and going through my Sparkle Dog phase, I'm not sure if it's really known about me, but I'm a big gearhead. I race cars, and I like to work on cars as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah. It was a British term for a V8 engine at idle. They said, oh, it's got a nice woofle to it. And I went, oh, that's really cute. It's adorable. Yeah. It's like a dog, but like a car. And then also I really loved the PlayStation 1 game Tail Concerto, and the main character of that was named Waffle. And I was obsessed with the game. So I went, aha, I'll be Woofle.
Okay.
Stuck. And now I'm coming up on 33 years old and people are still calling me Woofle. So
sticking around.
That's really cool though, because it's a perfect melding of your two things that you really love. You know, like RPGs and cars, which is cool. And animals too.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then Justin has the question that we ask almost every composer.
So, if you could only consume one beverage for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
I'm going to have to say kombucha because that's pretty much all I drink anyway.
Okay.
And I don't know why. I really like it for some reason. So it would either be that or Thai iced tea, which is the other thing I drink too much of.
All right. So that closes out our episode on Freedom Planet. And, it was a real pleasure speaking with you, Leila, today on this episode. We got to talk about Freedom Planet 2, and your composition style and everything. So we want to thank you for coming aboard the XVGM radio station. What are you up to, and where can we find you?
Okay, so I am up to a lot of things at the moment. Right now, in chronological order, there's Miasma Caves, which right now is in, early access on Steam.
Okay.
And it's shaping up really well. It's kind of a mining exploration game. It's a pacifist one too. You don't fight the monsters. You just kind of try to outsmart them. I'm also working on Leilani's Island, which is really funny because that's my name. That one, the guy who's making it was a big fan of the Wario Land games, and he really liked the physics and ideas of those, and he's made, it almost feels like a physics toy, kind of like Sonic does, where it's just like momentum and all that really matters in it, and that one's shaping up to be really, really good. The latest one I just got hired to work on, there's two. That's right. The latest one I got hired to work on is Chronotis, which is a fighting game that is also a card game, which is a really, really cool melding of genres, and that team is very professional and very driven. I'm also working on a game called Kyle and Lucy in Wonderworld, which is a side-scroller, kind of a 90s style side-scroller, just beautiful artwork, and very fun to play, kind of momentum-based, again, like Sonic and like Freedom Planet.
Right.
So that's the game projects. The other thing is I'm working on a novel series, which is kind of an homage to the RPGs I grew up on, which has a soundtrack of its own. The first one is out. The first album and the first book are both out. I'm working on the second one right now, so I'm hoping to have the second one out by next year, as long as there are no hiccups with that. So that it's basically a story told by video game music.
Wow.
I'm very proud of that.
So that's something we can check out on your Bandcamp, or is that something that we would buy on Amazon?
Yeah, that's through my publisher's site. And the other thing I'm working on right now is I have a side project where I do just all 80s pop styled music, which I call Capel Space. It doesn't really have a name of its own, but I've done like 4 or 5 albums in that. So if you like 80s music, there's also that. Cool. And of course, I'm working on Freedom Planet 2, so I got a lot of buns in the oven right now.
Yeah,
that came out wrong. So yeah, that's about what I'm working on. You can find me on Twitter at LRWoofle. I think that's the only social media I really have. I'm not very social online. I kind of just hide out in my little corner.
All right, so at the end of every episode, we like to talk about our favorite tracks, our favorite picks from the soundtrack, and of course we invite our composers to also pick from the list of the songs that we played and pick their own favorite tracks. So I would say let's let the guest of honor go first. What was your favorite pick from your soundtrack?
Oh, that is a tough one. Of course, you put me on the spot. Actually, I'm pretty fond of Fortune Knight 2, and I say that because I wrote that when I was just really young. I was like a teenager, and I had only composed like the first 30 seconds of it, and it sat on my hard drive for the next 10 years.
Oh wow.
And Strife came along, and then I was able to bring it back to life, so that was pretty cool.
Justin?
I would probably go with Fortune Knight 2. It's just sort of what I'm feeling at the moment. There's a lot of really great stuff on the soundtrack to begin with, but
for sure,
for right now in this moment, Fortune Knight 2 is probably my favorite.
I'm gonna say Major Boss Battle. That one
good pick.
I cannot get it out of my head. And I'm not even joking. Like when I step away from the podcast and when I go to sleep at night, I know I'm going to hear da-na-na, da-da-na-na, da-da-na. It's going to be just...
Give Strife to thank for that particular lick.
It's going to be...
He knocked that one out of
chiming in my head there. And also that...
So, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Alex Messenger, Scott McElhone, Cam Worma, Chris Murray, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Jordan and Anson Davis, Chris Myers, Peter Panda, The Autistic Gamer 89, and Mixmaster. If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/xvgmradio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
And if you'd like what you've heard, please consider giving us a rating on iTunes and a review.
You can also join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/xvgmradio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks, or just talking about the podcast itself.
And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle for both of those sites is @XVGMRadio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links will be in the show notes.
All right, so again, we want to thank Leila Wilson, aka Woofle, for joining us for this episode. Please check out all of the stuff that she's working on. So what do we got coming up in 2 weeks, Justin?
All right, so coming up in 2 more weeks, we have a very special after-school episode called Mike's Picks.
Yeah.
We did
Justin's picks back
a while
on
back.
episode 14.
So I think it's about time. You may all know Mike, but it's time to get to know Mike again.
Yes, I'm going to pick some really good stuff that I didn't pick the first time I did on my previous podcast, Pixel Tunes Radio, because I did a Mike's Picks episode on that as well, very, very, very early on, and I picked a lot of stuff that was like Mike the song, like Sparkman from Mega Man 3.
Oh my god.
Stuff like that. So this time around, I've picked a bunch of tracks, and it's all stuff that you'd be like, really? He's going with that? So, yeah, stay tuned for that in 2 weeks, boys and girls. This is Mike.
And Justin.
Signing off from XVGM Radio. If Capcom was a grilled cheese sandwich, that's what this would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many cheeses?
That'd be
you
a
put
very
in the sandwich?
interesting sandwich.
Yeah. That's what it is. It's a grilled cheese sandwich.
But how many cheeses?
It tastes a little bit like Breath of Fire, a little bit like Street Fighter, and a little bit like Mega Man.
Yeah. I definitely get a Mega Man, like the Power Battles games.
Mm-hmm.
The Mega Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. And to answer your question, Justin, it's 2 cheeses.
2.
You never go more than 2, because that's an excess of cheese.
There's no such thing as an excess of cheese.
No, there is. First off, no. When you're making grilled cheese, you use 2 slices of cheese, you butter both sides of the bread, and then you put it down, and then you cook it. But it's probably going to burn because I always end up burning it. But I like it burnt, so I'm good.
That's the flavor.
Yeah.
This is now a grilled cheese podcast, and we're going to teach you how to make grilled cheese because Mike is wrong.
That's right. Grilled cheese radio.
Make sure to dip it in tomato soup.
Oh,
that's of course.
That's the life hack.
That's comfort food right there.
That is.
See, this is why we have composers on, to make sense of our nonsense. We're sitting there like, yeah, it sounds like a whoosh sound, and, you know, I end up sounding like Carl from
What's
Aqua
the
Teen
deal
Hunger
with
Force.
whoosh sound?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, it's just a reversed bass sample. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah, clearly.
The non-25 word explanation.
Yeah. Welcome back to XVGM Radio. That was Target. Nope. That was... Wow. Okay, then.
That's staying in.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's an outtake.
That's an outtake. All right.